Good morning and good evening. Welcome to the In Our AI Era podcast with Ragnar and Tina. Hi, Tina. How are you doing?
Very excited for today's episode where we'll talk about Cowork, and this time we'll talk about the Cowork CLI.
Awesome. I'm very excited. So let's begin. Can we start with our AI concept of the week? What do you?
I'm very excited to share my AI concept of the week because this time I brought some visual aids. And
Oh,
the thing that I want to, it's going to be awesome. The thing that I want to talk about this week is the reverse center. I don't know if you've heard about this. It's a new sort of AI metaphor from the author Cody Doctorow. And well, so the first thing is you need to know what is a centaur, and it looks something like this. So a centaur is a human sitting on top of a horse, and the idea is that if this was a metaphor for machines, that if you're using machines well, it makes you stronger. You become a human brain on top of a machine that has all this horsepower. So another example of a human centaur kind of thing would be a bicycle or a car, because you're the brain of the machine, but it extends massively what you can do. And so now Cody's metaphor is the reverse centaur. And I will explain that maybe by starting with a story about my colleague, ex-colleague Bart, who is a guy I worked with about 10 years ago. He was a really good Power BI developer. But before he became a Power BI developer, he was studying in the Netherlands, and he had a night shift working in a milk factory. And in this milk factory, they had a sort of thing that looked like a printer. But what it did is it took milk cartons and filled them up with milk. And 95% of the time, it automatically filled up these milk cartons with milk. Um, but sometimes it wouldn't work. So Bart's job was to sit next to this machine through the night, half asleep, and then wait for this machine to jam or to get stuck or to get some issue. And then he would need to get up, like pull out some of the cartons. You like when you have a printer that's not working, you're just pulling out papers, putting in new things, pressing all the buttons, so he would be doing that to the machine. And then eventually it will start working again and it would start filling up milk into these cartons. And so when you hear this story, you have this picture of the center in your mind, right? Bart being this majestic beast, being, made stronger by the machine. Obviously, no, right? This is more of a reverse center situation. And when I started to think about this, the first thing that came up when I Googled it is this hypothane, which is also a kind of impressive looking animal. So it's a horse head on top of a human body. But this is not what I mean. What I mean more is like something like this. So you have a human, and the machine, instead of making them more powerful, has really made them more dumb, right? So you kind of become a zombie that's just steered on by the machine. So that was my metaphor. Thankfully, Bart escaped the cartoon filling business. He became a Power BI developer, and so he didn't end up becoming a reverse center. But what I like about this is that I think it's really a good metaphor for AI, because we basically have the same choice. We can either use AI to make ourselves stronger, to look something like a centaur, strong human head and brain on top of a machine that's really amplifying what we can do and our thinking and our creativity and capabilities. Or we can let AI do the thinking for us, and then we can become, this stupid looking horse head on top of a human body. And so, yeah, this is my concept of the week. Every time you use AI, you have a choice. Are you becoming a centaur or are you becoming a reverse centaur?
amazing. I mean, I love the visuals for the first thing. And I can see that all your LinkedIn posts now as well have really good visuals. So I'm kind of excited to see more of that. Um,
I love
and
games.
I don't
Games are
have
always
it.
good.
I know. That's how you learn much faster. I see everywhere now is even myself, I started noticing I save like visuals or screenshots because it's simple way for you to understand.
Yes.
Um,
So,
awesome.
what is your concept of the week?
I am debating a lot of things, but I feel like I can't be so fun, so I'm gonna go a bit a bit very theoretical. I want to
Okay.
speak about couple things. One is SLT and RLCT. So basically, what SLT means is singular learning theory. And the reason for this is I want to bring it to the table. And as we speak more about, in my last video, I spoke about 70 billion parameter model or 4 billion parameter model. I want to get into a bit more deep of like how can we what does it even mean, right? So in classical statistics, we assume that you can measure a model complexity by the parameter count. So what's happening with people who are building new models is these neural nets breaks the assumption that many different models, a 4 billion parameter can do the coding for you, or a 71 or a 150 billion parameter can do the same kind of a thing. So it feels like many different weight configurations produce the same function. So the math is doesn't work out. Like you're like, why are we confused all the time? Like which model should I pick, right? And there is a new concept, or fairly like old, but the fix is the RLCT, which means real log canonical threshold. What does it mean is it measures how flat the loss around the solution is. What does it mean is if you're building a code, how much a different model can fail at a different level. So that is what gives us that confidence that this model is good for Python coding, this model is good for something. When I say flat, which is something similar to like a degenerate, which means it gave a wrong, completely wrong answer, or sometimes it's genuinely simple. It should be a simple task and it did fail. So regardless of the parameter count, what is happening is what this RLCT is able to fix. So it also helps with the effect in the effectivity of like how complex is it, not just by the weight count, but it looks at the problem and looks at how flat is it failing. That's why we can see that a 70 billion parameter can behave something far smaller, like a smaller object in terms of when there is a biggest complex problem you give. Yeah, either it's 70 billion or smaller, it's always going to fail, right? So it doesn't mean a billion parameter model means something. So I'm excited to see. I'm going to put some articles on this SLT and RCLC because most enterprise AI evals today, they measure accuracy at the training or after training. What
Yeah.
SLT gives you is a way to instrument the capability to do the training with your own data, with your own things. So, in my view, as I see a lot of companies trying to, I don't expect them to train their models anymore like old days. But if you want to bring your own model into your company, you need to learn the singular learning theory and other things. So hopefully it's too technical, but we'll jump into an amazing demo, Tina, with Cowork CLI.
Yes, and one of the things that I keep hearing is that we are really in the start of the AI era, right? So this is really sort of version one. We're in the DOS of AI. And so I think these kind of really technical topics in a couple of years, we're all going to be talking about them. Everyone's going to understand the basics. You know, it's just really what we're doing now by all using models from the same providers, you know, that's going to change. We're going to all have our own models, have open weighted models. So I think it's good to talk about these things and to start learning about them because we're going to know so much more about models in a couple of years. It's going to be very interesting.
Picking the right model, picking the thing is where you become efficient. Like a lot of people think about, hey, where is my AI efficiency? And we keep saying this and hearing, right? Do not use frontier models for non-frontier problems. So
Yes. Yeah.
it's not for all of you to learn, but it's good for you to know. Someone says, I like one thing that you shared long time ago, Tina, which was about um, I don't know, you called it something fascinating, which is you keep hearing all these fancy terms, but it means different for different people.
Yes.
So
Yeah.
I remember that
Semantic dilution, I think.
semantic delusion or something,
Yeah.
because even models think something different. So,
Yes.
but yeah, I'm excited for the CLI work, Tina. I'm excited for the demos.
Yes.
So let's dive in.
Sure. So first is we had a demo of Cowork here on one of the episodes at the beginning of June, and this was just as the Cowork became GA, and so we just briefly showed what Cowork looked like. Since then, it's really had a lot of upgrades. I think one of the biggest changes that we had since we recorded in June is this updated UI. So now you have it within M365, you can toggle between chat and Cowork. Then another thing is the models. And I don't know if you've seen this, you can now, when we were demoing it, we used Anthropic models. Now, of course, you can have GPT models, you have a lot more options. And you can also, I hope in the future, we'll be able to do open source models. This is, I think, coming soon. Then I wanted to ask you, are there any of the new features that you've used? There's a couple like it now has browser use, but I think this is Frontier only. There's branded PowerPoint templates. There's things like event-based tasks. Like, what has your Cowork experience been recently working with it?
The first thing was, I think in the UI, Tina, it was a lot of, maybe we can show our audience, is it was hard for me to know where do I change the model. So
Let's
it's
do
on the
that,
top
yes.
left now, right? It used to be on the
Yes.
right side. Now we are on the
Yes.
left side. And I like the GPT 5.6 Soul. So that is the main model I'm using most of the times. Also, some of this is internal. But the main feature for me has been ability to, like, as we become enterprise ready and everyone's using it at enterprise level, we can add our own skills to the thing. So I stopped building more agents and I started adding all my skills to the Cowork now. So a lot of my work is done in Cowork with the skills. And I like, maybe you'll show later, but I like the idea of like adding a skill instead of building a whole agent going forward. Uh, but I haven't used the way you are using in terms of CLI and other things. So I want to learn that today.
Okay, I'll show you how we do that. And it's good that you mentioned the skills because actually I'll be using this skill. So we won't go into details about it, but this is just a skill to make requesting leave in D365 easier. So it just knows kind of what it means for me to book paid time off and I've just done this so that when I show you the CLI, it knows what I mean. And I think that's a perfect use case for skills, right? Just making sure that if you've had a conversation with it, it understands what it is that you want because it has a skill. Then the things that I'm excited to try, but we can demo this in another video, is you now have scheduled, well, you always had scheduled task, and I don't have any setup for my demo tenant, but now you also have event-based tasks. And that means instead of it running every 10 minutes, you can say, run after my meeting ended, run after something happens in Dynamics. And that's sort of the new thing that I want to play with. And the other thing is the browser use. So if you have browser use, it will at one point ask you if you approve it. It has to be an Edge, and it's only Frontier at the moment. But that is also a great use case because then you can, browse websites and it can just get so much more information and do much more because it can use a browser. But let me show you the Cowork CLI. So there's now this Cowork CLI, which we'll share the link, is a sort of unofficial development tool that you can use to prompt Cowork from the terminal. So I am actually going to show you how to do this in PowerShell. We'll share this. This shows you everything on how to install it, how to chat with it, but I'm also going to show you how to do that. So what I'll do is I'll just open Cowork here on the side because then we can see it while it works. And then on the other side, I'll put my Windows terminal. Okay. So the first thing that you want to do is you're going to want to install it. So there we go. This is the command to install it. It's also on that website. In my case, it's already installed. So if I run this, it'll just run and check if there's any updates, which I hope there will not be because I practiced this demo before we started. So it will just check for a version. Then the second thing that you're gonna have to do is to log in. And because obviously if you open it in a terminal, it doesn't know to connect to this instance of Cowork. It doesn't know which tenant to go to. So as soon as it's installed, then decide which account you want to use for it and then connect to that. I'm going to use a demo tenant. You just say Cowork authenticate login and then the account that you want to do. So then it will log in. And luckily Cowork is very fast. Okay, so now I'm logged in with my demo tenant. And then if you just wanted to use it and just to chat with it, you could just go Cowork chat like this. And then it will just open a chat for you. It will just open a new session over here that you can use to chat with it. And it will tell you which models and which commands, etc. Another thing that's helpful to do here is just to ask help. So you can see all of the commands that you would have. And the ones that are maybe important for our context is the plugins command, because as you know, I always talk about Cowork in context of connecting it to the ERP plugin. So we're going to try the plugin command now. And the other one that is useful is to see the list of environments, because we want to obviously connect it to an environment, which is one of the parameters within this plugin command. Okay, and then of course there's all kinds of other options that you have. I'm just going to get out of this for now. So if you want to exit the chat, you just say quit. Okay, so as I said, let's start with looking at the plugins. And the first thing I'm going to do is just list them. So Cowork plugins list. And if I do that, it will give me a list of all the plugins that this instance of Cowork can connect to. Okay, so we can see here it has the ERP plugin. As I mentioned, that's always the number one starting point for me. And the reason why we're looking at this to start with is that we can see here it needs an environment, and it's always disabled by default. So if I would just start with Cowork Chat and start asking it about Dynamics, it would not know about it because it's always disabled by default. If I want to chat with Dynamics, I'm going to have to connect it to an environment because that's mandatory for this plugin. So we're going to need this, the ID, and then we're going to need an environment. So to get the list of environments, I'll just run a command to see all of the environments.
In that tenant.
And this will go on this tenant, yes, which is connected to this account, right? Because I logged in with a specific account. So it will give me all of the environments that are connected to this tenant, the Power Platform environments. And I am going to use this one as my demo. So, okay, let's run a command now connected to Dynamics. I have a command that looks like this. So the plugin that we want to connect with is this ERP one. I tell you this is the environment that I want to connect to. And then I'm just going to send it a command. So in this case, I'm going to ask it, I want to book PTO and Dynamics now for Friday, and I'll just tell it which legal entity I work in. But I actually have done this already, so let's do Thursday instead. Otherwise, it will tell me that it already has leave. So I'm going to run that now because I have the plugin specified and the environment, it will connect to Dynamics. And the reason why I've kept this open is because I thought it's nice to see that it starts creating the task really here. It really creates a task. So if I'll just refresh this to see my tasks lists.
So
You'll
I know
see.
it feels very funny because we're recording on Tuesday. Nowadays,
Yes.
the models have become so good that they understand what you mean by Thursday versus next Thursday or
Yes.
the
Yeah.
other Thursday. Yeah.
Exactly. That is very true, and actually we can see it think about it. So it'll say, okay, this is for when we're booking it, and then it's setting up the request in D365. And that's also why I wanted to open this, because here in the CLI you don't really get a lot of feedback, right? It's just saying sending message, and it has this sort of progress bar. But if you go into the UI, you can see that it's actually doing all of these things. It's asking for approval, which usually it would ask me here. In this case, I think it will auto approve it. Let's see what it does. Yeah, it just decides to auto approve based on my settings. And then as soon as it's completed, then it returns all of this information to me in one go. So it then said, I'll book leave for Thursday. And as you said, it knows exactly which date I mean. It knows that it has to do it in D365, also because of the skill that it has. And it gives me then a summary. This is the request ID. This is the type of leave, etc. Everything, including that it's a draft. And then it warns me that it's in the system, but it's not submitted yet. And then this is just really crazy for me. In the CLI, you can see how long each of these steps took. So you can see that it accessed the skill, and then it looked for tools, it looked for data entities, it created entities, of course, because it had to create my leave request, and it also looked at SQL data entities. So is this what you expected from the CLI?
The first thing is, I think I really what I like is that now we have one other way to do it, because sometimes every time when I do it with UI, I find it fascinating. Like I want more control, maybe this or that. But then when I see the demo, I it's nice to know that it first went for the skill. You never even mentioned the skill, right? So um, um,
Which you can
I
see
I
here.
mean,
It used
yeah, it picked up already. I think this gives a lot more control for us in terms of UI and testing. And I've never known that all of the other plugins were there as well, because when you did the plugin list, I noticed there is a Fabric plugin and others. So this is a great way for like a company or a team to know what does this cowork have, or what are all the things that we can do with it, maybe. And even like to get to see like environment needed and all is very clear here, versus on the UI you don't know what all you have connected to or not. So that's what I'm thinking.
yes. Yes. The other thing that I would say is just when you're done with this, we just activated the plugin for this session, right? All other sessions will not be connected if I start them from CLI. So if I want to return to this conversation, I just need to save this conversation ID, because then I can just resume the Copilot chat. So I can just go Cowork chat, resume with this ID, or I can just say resume latest, and then I can continue working within this session. For example, if I wanted to say submit it or something, then I can do it with resuming the chat. Also, this is a full-fledged chat, right? Even though it was started from the CLI, so I could also just say here submit the request.
Thank you, Tina. This is great. One of the things I've noticed is I only run everything in terminal now. So this kind of enables me to start thinking of using our cowork directly in the terminal. So that's what I'm excited about from my view, because it's fascinating how we came all about UI to back into terminal now. So I
Yes.
use all the tools, I use all the things that I need within the terminal. And also in terminal, sometimes I can open all the terminals, the ones I need and what I'm working on. So that also is very interesting for me. I haven't thought of all the use cases yet, but I'm really looking forward to debugging and few other things through terminal.
Yes. For me, so you're right, it's really funny. Cowork, both Copilot Cowork and Claude Cowork, was created because the terminal applications were so great. And everyone thought, just imagine if this thing had a UI, then I can share it with my less technical friend. And now we've created Cowork with a UI, and now we've created a CLI for it. So it's funny. I really think this is a development tool. So it's for companies who want to test Cowork CLI on behalf of users, and to find out how things are performing. The other thing that I think is very useful is this duration of the tool calls. So you can really use it for benchmarking, performance testing, checking did it actually call the skill, all of these things. And so I think for troubleshooting and figuring out if use cases work or get stuck in specific things, obviously this is a very simple use case, but if you had it connected to multiple plugins, you might not know which of the plugins are the one that's causing delays, and then here you can really see what was happening.
Yeah. I also feel like I remember when Cowork came, it's for knowledge workers, right? Cowork for
Yes, yeah.
knowledge workers was the tagline. I am thinking this is more like Cowork for builders.
Yes,
Be-
100%.
because you can run in your terminal, works on your local code base if you want to. You can write edits, run debugging, like you said. I also feel like the example you showed as well is something that I use CLI for most of it is you stay in control of the execution environment, which means like you could connect that CLI cowork to different environments, maybe like the way you're doing, and then do that work in that CLI for that specific environment. And I'm confident if you run something like a herder or local sandboxes, you can have multiple sandboxes with different terminals connected to different environments and keep doing the debugging, especially. But I have a question. I mean, I see that you already connected, but in my view, what I notice is I think we can use Cowork for builders. I'm going to tag it that way. With QA and other people who are testing our plugins for ERP, Fabric, or others, connecting to various environments and doing all their runs is what I'm thinking.
Yes, yeah, I agree. I think it's really for the technical folk who are working and helping implement Copilot Cowork, and for them to be able to test use cases and come up with more complicated scenarios. Because one thing that I would say is that booking my PTO in Dynamics is not a very good use case for Cowork. Like, the most complicated thing you mentioned, right, is that it needed to know that if I'm asking on Tuesday, what date is the Thursday. But ideally for Cowork, you want to give it more complicated tasks so it can really reason and come up with reasons. When I tried this use case the first time, I made a mistake. I said something like, book leave, and then I gave a date that didn't exist. I said like 17th of July on a Thursday, but that date was actually a Wednesday or something. And it spent a lot of time trying to figure out what I mean because I was really confused. And so I think this is not a great use case for Cowork because it's a bit too simple. So you want to
Yeah.
have something that's a bit more complicated, and this was to show how it works, but obviously you want something that has a bit more reasoning and judgment.
I feel like Cowork, I never used it. Like I always have to upload my files here and there. But I think with CLI, I can point it to my code base or something and then
Yes. Yeah.
actually get the same results out of it. And the way I'm thinking is if you already have a Cowork license, you don't have to think you're limited by the UI only. If you are a
Yes.
developer in your company and you have a Cowork license, you have that build capability. And I'm very excited to see where this goes, Tina, if they keep making
Yes.
it.
Me too.
I know you mentioned beta for a brief, but I would love to know a bit more on how that goes. And you also shared your LinkedIn post on this as well, right? On how to
Yeah. I'll
configure.
I'll put it
So,
down below. Yeah.
okay, awesome.
Perfect. Yeah. I think we should also put your article on using frontier models for frontier problems. So I think
Yes,
that's all down
that's
below.
awesome. Thank you. So thank you everyone for watching. We have a next episode coming soon. If you have any comments or if you want to reach out, please reach out to Tina and myself or put a comment below. Thank you.